taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Well, that was Democrat Senator Tim Kaine, who endorsed Bill Clinton for president and campaigned as Hillary Clinton's running mate. I wonder if he asked same questions of them. If past marital problems are now a barrier to entry for government service, Elon Musk's cost-cutting mission is about to get a lot easier. And there may not be many senators left. Hegseth was also grilled on his past statements that women should not serve in frontline combat roles and has accepted a nomination. He's made clear that women can serve in those roles, provided they meet the same standards as men. That's an inherently common sense position, but not for Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Some of our greatest warriors are women, and you support having them serve in combat. Now, that is a very, very big about face in a very, very short period of time. So help me understand, Mr. Hegseth, what extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013, because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast.
It went on and on like that. She really didn't let him answer. It was more about the gotcha. Yes, Hegseth has clearly softened his position in order to secure the job. That's indisputable. But that's how this whole politics thing works. Politics and power are not puritanical. It's about getting things done. If you trade 25% of your vision for 75% of your plan, it's normally a pretty good result. There are plenty of question marks about Pete Hegseth's qualifications for this job at a time when the modern world has seldom felt more dangerous. But it wasn't the tone for most of his hearing. At times, both sides seemed bent on grandstanding and using Hegseth to score political points. And I thought he hit the nail on the head when he said this.
Unlike the current administration, politics should play no part in military matters. We are not Republicans. We are not Democrats. We are American warriors. Our standards will be high, and they will be equal, not equitable. That's a very different word. We need to make sure every warrior is fully qualified on their assigned weapons system, every pilot's fully qualified and current on the aircraft they are flying, and every general or flag officer is selected for leadership or promotion purely based on performance, readiness, and merit.
So is Pete Hegseth the man for the job? Will Senator Marco Rubio make America safe again as Secretary of State? Did Trump just seal the Israel-Hamas ceasefire? He's literally just written on Truth Social that the deal has been agreed. And as Los Angeles braces for more winds and warnings of extreme danger, who will be held accountable for a disaster in failed preparation? Joining me to debate all this, the host of the Michael Knowles Show on Daily Wire, Michael Knowles, Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report, Wajahat Ali, the host of Democracy-ish, and Julie Roginsky, the Democrat strategist and author of the Salty Politics newsletter. Okay, well, welcome to all of you. A stellar panel, if I may say so, and Happy New Year to you all. Let me start with Dave Rubin. I watched most of Pete Hegseth's stuff yesterday, and all I kept thinking to myself, I've got a lot of military in my family. My brother was a British Army colonel. My sister married a British Army colonel. My grandfather was a decorated commando. My great uncle was a decorated war hero, and so on. So I watched with great interest, thinking one thing. If I was in the US military, would I feel good or bad about what I heard from Pete Hegseth? And I concluded I'd be pretty happy that I had a guy there who not only had served his country for a long period with great personal courage himself, but seemed to really understand what is required from a military, and also seemed to pride actual meritocracy over mediocrity or virtue signaling or box ticking or DEI or any of these things. And I thought, yeah, if I'm in the US military, I think I'd probably like this guy being at the top of the pyramid. What did you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I can speak as someone that's on this side of the pond, that I have friends and family in the military, and they're happy about this too. You know, there's two things going on with Hegseth here, despite the, I would say, hysterical virtue signaling of some of the senators that you just showed there. The things are that he's qualified. There's very little question about his qualifications. But the other thing that I think is really allowing him to shine right now is his decade-plus time at Fox News, where he is able, as a TV presenter, that's what he's been, and a talk show host, he's able to communicate these ideas clearly. When he went out of his way to talk about equality and not equity, and that we should have meritocracy and it's qualifications that should matter, these are all of the important things that we need to reintegrate, not only into the military in America, very obviously, instead of lowering our standards and caring about skin color and genitals and sexuality, but we need to reintegrate it across all of our institutions. That's the work for the broader Trump administration. But I think Hegseth, well, we also know he's going to pass. I mean, Thune, who's the majority leader, has already said it. I mean, it's basically a done deal already. But I think he's going to reform the military very quickly. And I think we're going to get back to having a functioning military that people can be proud of, rather than counting, you know, how many lesbian generals that wear dog collars we have. As important as that is, Michael Knowles.
Why are you pointing at me? Hold on. Wait.
I'm not going to bring that allegation to the fore before we have a Senate inquiry. Let me go to Wajahat. Wajahat, I mean, I've heard the criticisms about Pete Hegseth. I know him a bit from when I've done stuff on Fox. He's always been perfectly good to me, and always, I thought, a very good performer on television. But I also thought that under fire yesterday, and some of it got a bit personal and ferocious, he conducted himself calmly. He seemed very well informed. He clearly has some opinions about the military which others may not share. But I certainly didn't get a feeling of somebody out of his depth. And when you actually look at people who've held that job in the past, yes, some have been generals, but they can be pretty intransigent sometimes in their view about how things should be. And some have not been generals and are eminently less qualified than Pete Hegseth. So what was your view?
Look, I know that Republicans actually like affirmative action because they're perfectly fine with mediocre MAGA men and lowering the standards to the point where Pete Hegseth, the Fox News host, can slither under it and be the Secretary of Defense. For people who don't know, the Secretary of Defense overlooks a budget of over $900 billion, 3 million people. He is responsible in particular for defense policymaking. We're talking about law and order, national security. You're going to give it to Pete Hegseth, a man who was in the National Army Guard. His fellow colleague in the Guard looked at his tattoos and actually reported him to be an insider threat because it was so extreme. This is a man who wrote a book called American Crusade. In his book, Pete Hegseth said, I am too extreme for the U.S. military. In his book, Pete Hegseth said, I support these militias, these paramilitary forces. In his book, he calls the enemies liberals extremists. So much for unity. This is a man, not just adultery, but sexual impropriety. He has been alleged of sexual impropriety and sexual assault. If he has nothing to hide, release the woman that he has signed to an NDA and paid off. Let her tell her story. This is a man whose own mother sent one of the most damning emails I have ever heard and read in my life. If your mother sends the email that Pete Hegseth's mother said you have failed in life, accusing him of being a sexual abuser, a man whose own Fox colleagues have said, allegedly in the New York Times, that they're worried about his alcoholism and alcohol problem, and a man who has economic impropriety allegations. He was released from 2 nonprofits. What are we doing here, Piers? Listen, with Marco Rubio, I disagree with him. You don't see me here complaining. Qualified guy, intelligent guy, Secretary of State, fine. Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, what are we doing? You guys are putting lipsticks on a pig and you're making America less safe. And the right wing in MAGA is doing this for Pete Hegseth.
Okay.
You're making this country less safe just because you're bending the knee to Donald Trump. And he wants a lapdog who, by the way, I'll agree with Dave on this, who's good on TV.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do.
Come
we're
to
going
Michael,
to trade our national security for Pete Hegseth.
Okay.
Release the woman from the NDA. I want to hear from the woman. Secretary of Defense, let's defend women for Pete Hegseth. You made your point. That's my take.
You made your point. Any negatives while we're at it?
He works
out. It was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke. You haven't actually taken that seriously. Let me bring Michael in here. I mean, look, a whole litany of stuff there, almost all of which was put to Pete Hegseth. I thought he actually batted away all of that stuff. We got a clip actually of him batting away one of them. Let's take a look.
All they were out to do, Mr. Chairman, was to destroy me. And why do they want to destroy me? Because I'm a change agent and a threat to them, because Donald Trump was willing to choose me, to empower me, to bring the Defense Department back to what it really should be, which is warfighting. So I'm willing to endure these attacks. But what I will do is stand up for the truth and for my reputation. False attacks, anonymous attacks, repeated ad nauseum, printed as nauseum, as facts. We have provided to the committee, Mr. Chairman, and I know you're going to share, on-the-record statement after on-the-record statement from people who have served with me, worked with me at Fox News, Concerned Vets, Vets for Freedom, you name it, from the top of the chain to the bottom, who will say, I treat them with respect, with kindness, with dignity. That's men, that's women, that's black, that's white, that's every background. I have prided myself as a leader of respecting people, being professional.
Michael, I thought that was quite an effective response, really, because a lot of it is just innuendo, hearsay, unsubstantiated allegation. Other stuff has been settled, as Wajahat says. That's not uncommon in America. It's incredibly common for people to do NDA settlements or whatever with no blame or liability attached. Where do you sit with this? I mean, it looks like Hegseth is going to get...
I don't know about you. That's not common.
Sorry?
That's not common, not for me. I don't know about you, but that's not common.
I'm not saying for you or me.
There's a police report where I sexually assaulted a woman and I signed her to an NDA.
In America, that kind of settlement is not uncommon, is my point. Just generally, in the American system, a lot of things get settled that way without any admission of liability or wrongdoing, which is the case with Pete Hegseth. Michael, where do you sit with this?
Well, so much of what Wajahat just said is not true, or as you point out, Piers, is completely unsubstantiated, like the allegations that Pete Hegseth shows up trying to work. Excuse me one second, Wajahat. I've been on that morning show with Pete a number of times. I've been in studio with him a number of times. The only thing you could accuse Pete of is being too alert and energetic. I found it overwhelming, actually, while I was there, tired, trying to dust the sand out of my eyes. But you suggest that the graduate of Princeton and Harvard, who for decades has been in the U.S. military, served his country honorably, that he's somehow unqualified to work at the Pentagon. The most egregious accusation you make against him, though, is that he's an extremist because he has a tattoo. Could you tell us what the tattoo is?
The tattoos specifically, I did not make the allegation that he's an extremist. It was actually
you
his
repeated the
fellow
allegation.
colleague
So what's
who
the
called
tattoo?
him as an insider threat.
Yeah, right. So what's the tattoo?
Not me.
I can tell you. It says
it was his fellow
Let
colleague.
Wajahat answer, because Wajahat raised the tattoo.
Go ahead.
Wajahat, it's a fair question. What is this tattoo that you're so upset about?
It was his colleague. Wait. Two things.
Wajahat, hang on. Simple question. What is this tattoo that you're so upset about?
I wasn't the one upset about it. I was talking about his fellow colleague. This is exactly what I said. His fellow colleague.
Do you know what it was?
In the U.S. Army, called him out as a potential insider threat.
Well, what is the
tattoo?
tattoo?
The tattoos on his chest.
What is the tattoo?
Also, I called him an extremist based upon his own book. Read the book,
What
American
is the
Crusade,
tattoo?
his own words.
If you don't know what the tattoo is, just admit it.
Oh, my Lord. Listen,
Would you
what
like
is
to
it?
tell you what the tattoo is?
I want to,
I'm
wait.
happy to
No, I'm
inform you.
genuinely intrigued. Do you know what it is or not,
We got a
Wajahat?
panelist.
Wajahat, do you know what it is or not?
She hasn't spoken yet. A woman hasn't spoken yet.
She's going to come. She's going to answer the question you're not answering. Final question to you, Wajahat.
I did answer it, but
Final
go ahead.
chance.
I got my colleague right here.
Be honest, Wajahat. Do you actually know what that tattoo is or not?
Listen, what I do know is I read his book, and in his book, if you read it, called American Crusade, in his book, wait a second.
Be honest.
His book.
Be honest.
Look,
Ironically,
you guys are putting lipstick on a pig
no one's going to crucify you
bending
if you
the
don't
knee
know
for
the
Donald
answer.
Trump,
But do you know the
putting
answer?
our national security at risk for Pete Hegseth. I'm telling you everything, and you guys are finding ways to spin. Why are you guys okay with a man who has an NDA with a woman that he allegedly sexually assaulted?
Do you know what the tattoo is that you got so upset about?
It was his colleague. His colleague called him out as an insider threat, not me. His colleague.
Is a simple question.
And I also said, go to his book, read his words.
But just to be clear, Wajahat,
you've got Pete stuff.
I'm too extreme from the U.S. military. Pete Hegset's own words. Why are you okay with that, Michael?
Wajahat, you don't know,
Michael, why are you guys okay with that?
You don't know,
literally in his book, American Crusade, he says he's too extreme for the U.S. military.
You don't know, do you?
Oh my gosh! All right, let's look it up right now.
I'd also love to know the names of some of Fox colleagues.
Don't look it up. Let's go back to Michael. Michael,
hang
on, Michael. We gave him his chance. He obviously has no idea. Michael, what is the answer?
This falls along a threat as an insider threat.
I've gone back to Michael now.
2021 pegged Pete Hegseth as a potential insider.
You had 98 chances to answer and you failed the test. Sorry. I'm going to Michael. Don't talk over each other. Michael.
The tattoo in question, called a Jerusalem cross, that this is a medieval Christian symbol, goes back a long time. In fact, at Jimmy Carter's funeral, there was a Jerusalem cross on the floor of the cathedral, and on the program for the funeral, there's one other tattoo that some have suggested could be extremist. It's the phrase Deus Vult, which is a medieval Christian slogan, a long traditional slogan that refers to God's will, and it goes back a long way. These are very traditional, very mainstream Christian symbols that not only are not extreme in any way, but which even the people who want to accuse him of extremism couldn't possibly name. That is pathetic.
All right.
My
Not really.
has
His
that
insider
tattoo.
guardsman did it, which is what I said. And also I said that he called himself too extreme for the U.S. military in his book. That's pathetic.
Okay.
So is Pete Hegseth lying that he's too extreme in his book?
Let me
Michael
go
and
to
Dave?
Julie. He's been waiting.
He's too extreme for
Wait, wait,
radical
wait.
leftists.
Let me go to
So you're
Julie.
saying that he's
Let me go
lying?
to Julie.
He said it. Is he lying?
Be gentlemanly, please. We have a lady who's not spoken.